Welcome back to another video. This topic of today is going to be how to minimize the impact and talking about the impact of dealing with a toxic ex. This is something that I am actually experiencing right now, and it's reminded me of some of the realities of our situation that I thought would be good to talk about tonight. One of the things that is often the case is we're presented with a multitude of double binds, basically meaning that when a situation arises and you're trying to determine your next course of action, the reality is that every decision that you look at to make has a lot of pitfalls associated with them. It's one of those things where it can feel like, it can feel overwhelming, and it can feel as if, you're backed into a corner because there aren't really very many good options. That's why it's critically important that you take your time to really look at what's going on and try to make the best decision that you can possibly make. Now, one topic that I've been reluctant to talk about, and I've been meaning to talk about, but just kind of waiting, has to do with taxes, right? We're rolling in, if you're in the United States, I'm not sure about other countries, but we're rolling into the tax season. I always try to do mine as early as possible to just to make sure that the ex doesn't, decide to throw a monkey wrench into the mix. And for the first 6-7 years, it wasn't really an issue because she wasn't working, so there was nothing really for her to do. So it was no big deal. And as a result of that, our initial court order said that I some people say, well, you alternate years or whatever for claiming the kids. My court order says I get the kids every year. But last year she started working. Now, the funny part is that, when she starts working, child support should go down and all that stuff. And as you guys know, I haven't pushed any of that. I sent an email, I think in the summer, basically saying, hey, are you ready to stipulate a change? And it was ignored and stuff like that. So, normal stuff. And as a result of that, it appears as though some things kind of ramped up with our youngest daughter. So I just kind of backed off on everything, and I'm just like, whatever. So I was a little worried about taxes this year because I'm like, well, if something happened in that regard, it could be financially devastating for me. And I wasn't even thinking about, peeling off a kid here or there, excuse me, on it. I was just like, get it in, get it done, signed, sealed, delivered, processed, and just be done with it, which is what I did, which is what I do every year. Well, last week, I got an email from the ex that said, hi, Duane, in the way I always talk about in hybrid no contact. And let me see if I can, I'm not going to show it on the screen, but let me see if I can read this. So I can just really just kind of hit this, which I may not be able to do, to be honest. Let me try this. And the email was just, like I said, hi, Duane. So as per our previous conversation about me claiming one of the kids on my taxes when I got a job, I'm planning on claiming one on my taxes year. Just wanted to let you know to make sure you hadn't already filed. Okay, so here's the funny part about this. And to full disclosure, and this was kind of interesting, is I had a little bit of a panic attack when I received that email, and I haven't had that response in years. And it's been one of those things that I was worried about coming up on this year. So And I paused to answer. I had some other things going on, and I'm like, I really need to think about this because, there's all kinds of ways I could respond. I could have been like, well, what about all the medical bills you said you were going to pay, that you haven't paid for years because you weren't working, and I didn't do an issue on that, or change the child support and all that kind of stuff. So here I am trying to think of, how do I respond to this? What do I say that protects me but doesn't create a colossal mess at the same time? And I've brainstormed through multiple different scenarios. I've thought about, what if I just said, nope, already filed, and just leave it at that? Or do I try to say something? Do I just ignore it? Do I, start throwing flamers back at her? And it's one of those things where it's like, there's no good solution, right? I mean, I even actually consider it's like, okay, well, let me find out how much this will cost me. What if I take one kid off, let her claim the one kid? How much is that going to cost me? Finally got an answer back later today, and it's about $1,000, which is a little depressing, right? And then I looked through the California Department of Child Support Services and found their online calculator, keyed in my numbers, keyed in what I think her numbers are because she hasn't shared them. And if I'm calculating it correctly, then my child support should go down about $340 a month, about $4,000 a year. And you could look at it and say, anybody who's been on this channel for a while knows that the Department of Child Support Services in California had recommended to me a couple of years ago that, hey, we impute wages. She should be working, and if she's not working, we'll impute her wage, which would have lowered child support then, probably a little bit more because I had another one on. It was like $600 or something, and I didn't do it. I was like, well, do I really want to go down that road? Do I really want to engage on it? And do I really want to risk my peace and my sanity in my own life for a few $100s potentially, right? Because then you still have to go to court. You have to, because she's not going to, agree to, or at least back then wasn't going to just agree to stipulate to a reduction based on what the recommendation of the Department of Child Support Services was. I didn't even talk to her about it. So that's what I'm looking at. I'm like, well, God, how do I deal with this? What do I say? What do I do? What is the right, what is the best solution? And I waited a few days. I mean, it's been a few days. I finally, and I'm not feeling really well. So took some time off on Friday. I'm not feeling incredibly well right now. Excuse me. So it's tough. And what I ultimately did say is, and I'll just read this to you so you can kind of follow. Now, keep in mind, this took me a few days to draft. And I went through a couple of iterations, basically following the technique that I outlined in hybrid no contact. It says, hi, X, like I always say to do, comma. It says, oh, I do not recall us talking about this unless you're talking about before the divorce was final. I have already filed my taxes. However, I have called and asked what it would cost to amend my return and how it would change things. The person has been sick, so I probably won't get an answer until next week, which is what I thought was going to happen, but the person did actually email me later that day. Honestly, I figured that we were keeping things the same since you hadn't answered about adjusting child support now that you are working and you haven't paid the current and past medical. I'm not sure how much you are actually making, but doing a conservative guess, it looks like I'm paying about $350 more than I'm required to under the guideline support. Honestly, I found out that California would impute your wages back when our son was coming off child support, and I just didn't do anything with it. If you want to just leave things as is, let me know. Otherwise, I'll get back to you when I get an answer from the accountant. If you want to look into changing things, let me know how much you're making, and I'll generate up one of the calculators to see what the real numbers are. So now I'm sure that that can be read in a snarky way. I tried to draft that in such a way to be as benign as possible. Because of this particular situation, it's a lot more complicated to minimize the words. And it was one of those things where I'm like, well, I have to put out enough information for context. Otherwise, it's just going to create extra drama, right? I mean, if I would have wrote back and just said, hi, X, comma, I already filed my taxes and I claimed all the kids. Have a nice day. Obviously, that would, one, that doesn't put into context what it means, right? I mean, so it's like, she's not going to, I mean, in her, no matter what, here's the reality. And this is for everybody watching this. Your ex is not going to give a rat's ass how anything affects you. They're only going to care how it affects them. And more than likely, they're only going to look at the positives on how it affects them and not the negatives. And what I mean by that, or what I'm trying to say, is more than likely in this situation, the ex is only going to be, my ex is only going to be concerned with how her being able to claim head of household and having one child and claiming all of that for the one kid, the almost 19-year-old, is going to affect her. And if that means she gets back, $1,000 or $2,000 or whatever, in her mind, more than likely, lowering child support is not even going to be an option. It's like, well, that $4,000 doesn't count because we're not lowering it, would be my guess. Now, I could be wrong. I mean, maybe I'll get an email back saying, oh, well, here's my numbers, and absolutely, find out what the amendment is, and let's, amend your, you can amend your return. I'll claim her, and we'll lower child support, and it'll all be great and fair. Just in the comments below, how many people think that scenario is going to play out? Or maybe I should put a poll. If I can figure out how to put a poll, I'll do that. But put it in the comments below. Do you really believe? Do it two ways. Do you believe the ex in my situation, would agree to that? And then turn it around to your own ex, and would they ever agree to it as well? So curious what you think. A little bit of audience interaction. The problem with all this is, like I was saying before, it's the double binds. It's like there's no good solution, right? And maybe a few months after this, I'll think or I'll look at it and totem, if that's a word, and realize that I should have just never claimed the other kid. Gave her one. I wouldn't know which one she was going to do, but just guessed because there was no communication with it. And in that course of that situation, I could have just said, "Oh yeah, no, that's fine. I expected you to claim that person." I don't know. I mean, we take so many hits on these things financially, emotionally, and it's tough, right? Because you want, you want a little bit of fairness, and it goes back a lot to what I often talk about with how valuable your peace and serenity is. Now, to be perfectly honest, I think probably the biggest driver for me going into this is I was really worried about taxes. I didn't know if I would get money back, if I was going to have a huge bill. I didn't know if she had filed and she beat me to the punch, so to speak, and my return would get rejected, and then I would have, God forbid if she claimed everybody and I, was trying to, and I was stuck basically, single or, single zero, it would be devastating. I don't know how I would be able to overcome that bill and then adjust down my deductions to the point where I could pay the next year's bill. It would be bad. It would really be bad. I was planning I, I had pre-planned that in the event that, if everything crapped out, selling everything, moving out of this house, selling everything I owned, moving in with somebody trying to just, really try to minimize my outgoing and try to pay down a bunch of bills as possible. And, I was mentally preparing myself for it. Fortunately, it doesn't appear that that's the case. Fortunately, even if, excuse me, even if this goes badly just with the one kid, it's $1,000, but it's doable, right? It's not great news, and it wouldn't be great news for next year, but it's not one of those, what do you call it? Like, the end of world, catastrophic events that just there's no recovery. I think I could still eke out. My point on this is how important it is to slow yourself down and not jump to a response. When I first got that email, I think I even opened up my email and I started drafting a response. And I'm just like, everything I was putting down or typing out was like, oh, I can't say that. No, I can't word it that way. And I finally just said, okay, delete. I'm like, I need a bit of time to really think about this, calm down, get some answers so I know what I'm saying. And technically, when I sent her that email I read to you earlier, I still didn't have answers. I had some ideas. To be honest, it's worse than I thought. I thought it would only be a few $100s. As opposed to the numbers that came back. So I was a little disappointed in that, but that does seem to typically be the case, that things are, not quite the way we seem a lot of times. So the key point on this is trying to figure out the best course of action, the best decision that helps you, that you can't even say what's fair, because that typically is going to happen. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see what happens in this particular case, and that'll obviously make for another video. But I guess the big takeaway is if you get caught up in a situation like this and you're still struggling with this, and I'll put a link up for my hybrid no contact video. You have to watch that, because it would have been so easy for me to flame back out and say, well, according to that, we should have changed child support. And I've already lost, $8,000 or $9,000 in child support that I've overpaid, and you haven't paid the medical in 3 years. I could have said all these things that accomplished nothing. And depending, like I mentioned earlier, depending on what the ultimate outcome of this is, it might be one of those things where I may ultimately just wish that I just would have not claimed it, or just said, oh crap, and just did an amendment and changed it. I don't know. It's crazy. This might be the reason why I got sick, because all this stuff happened, and it really kind of flared up my stress levels. So bottom line is, I know I said this once before, bottom line is take it slow. Really think about things. Take deep breaths on it. Don't allow the emotions of all of this to overtake you. In my situation, I would have every right to be completely angry, and to have this be triggering, and have this roll back everything that's already happened over the course of the last 9 years, of all the injustice and all the problems and all the, well, it's good for me, but not, I don't care about you, but this solution works for me, so this is what we're going to do, type of thing. So just, take it easy on yourself. Take some deep breaths. What I always say, what I always preach is this is all about the long-term, the long-term game, or the long-term solution, what you're trying to really accomplish. Again, let me just rehash this. I even in this basically said, I didn't quite say it this way, but I just said, if leave things the way they are. I mean, I'm basically saying in my mind, I think that I'm supposed to get $350 more a month back. If you want to do that, great. If not, I mean, I'm trying to say, look, I'm willing to take a $4,100 a month, not month, a year loss, just so I don't have to deal with it. So, another question I want to ask, because I can remember a time where the idea of not fighting for that money was just too much. So, how many of you right now hear me say that, and it just makes you angry, and you're like, no way in hell. And it's like, Duane, you need to go for that. She shouldn't get a dime more than what she's quote unquote entitled to, right? And you can just feel yourself getting angry and just, your heart racing. Just, I'd like to know, because I can remember having conversations with people where they would say what I'm just saying to you, and it would make me mad. I would be mad for them because it was triggering my emotions on my situation. I think the good thing about this, or hopefully the takeaway you see out of this, is you see a guy who's been through this for years, almost coming up on 9. Maybe, divorce I think will be, I get confused. It's either 8 or 9. I think I'm in 8 years. I think 9 in June, it'll be 9 years, I think. Who now is to the point where it doesn't trigger me. I mean, yes, it did. I did have a little bit of an anxiety attack because I'm just like, I got scared about what does it mean, what's going to happen, just that unknown. But I was able to calm that down pretty quickly. And hopefully you can see, okay, this guy's been able to do that. So I'm not that much different from everyone else, right? Okay, maybe I got a few different, my screws are a little looser in different places, so to speak. But I don't think what I've been able to do is unachievable for other people, especially when I think back about how I was 6 years ago, 7 years ago. I mean, I was angry, I was bitter, I was depressed, I was, hurt and angry. I think I said that, but I'll say it again because it was a big one. And I couldn't see a way back then that I would feel anything other than those feelings. So definitely would like to, so please share your thoughts on those questions I asked throughout this video, because I would really be curious to see what you had to say. If you are new to this channel and this information seems helpful for you, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell notification so that YouTube will actually notify you when I make a video. If you like what I do, please consider becoming a channel member. YouTube turned that on. You can look down below and there should be a join button on your mobile device or in your web browser, and you can become a member and get some interesting perks. And hopefully soon I will also have some shirts available. So that way you can show some support for the channel and help me out at the same time. Help me cover that extra money I'm going to lose. Anyways, guys, take some deep breaths. Try to, don't let this crap overwhelm you. And I will catch you on the next video. Take care.